I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we'll start the meeting with a roll call. McKee here. Friedrich?
Friedrich here.
Berenkamp?
Here.
Nichols?
Here.
And Councilor Lanterman is not here tonight. He's absent tonight. We knew that ahead of time. If you'd like to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, agenda approval. Is there any, looks like there's one revision. Any other additions?
Actually, Mayor, that was erroneous.
Oh.
So there were no revisions and no additions to this agenda. I think that's a first for us in a long time.
Cool. Unless there's anything from council. Going once, going twice? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Berenkamp.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And then we will go on to, we have two important presentations today, and we will start with recognize the MRPA Award and Longevity Award for JCB.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if we can come down, and Jessica, if you can go forward. So ladies and gentlemen, this award is recognized from the Minnesota Recreation and Parks Association is for outstanding leadership in the profession for someone who's been in the profession for less than 8 years. So it's called the Horizon Award, and it's a pretty big deal. We have someone take it.
Oh, we've got
Who's going to be the official photographer?
big thanks to the police department for coming out.
I do have, in accordance with tradition, when we have these type of things, put together some fun facts about the year that we're celebrating or the year you started. Unfortunately, that was 2020, so it was a little harder to find some fun facts. But here's what I did find. COVID-19 happened, unfortunately. Gas
Bleak
prices,
fact number
however,
one.
dropped to $2.17 a gallon because of COVID. Top movie that year was Bad Boys for Life, which made $426.5 million at the box office because of COVID. The top songs were Blinding Lights by The Weeknd and a song that I'm not going to say the name of by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. And in sports news, the Twins won the AL Central, but were then swept by the Houston Astros, extending their record-breaking 18-game postseason losing streak. So, fun
So
year.
a great year.
Fun year. We got you here, so that was
Well, full time.
yeah, there you go.
So for 5 years of service to the community of Corcoran, I'll take that one.
Thanks.
Do you want to say anything?
Stand up.
Uh-oh.
I am standing, it's just hard to tell. Thanks. It's been real, it's been fun, and it's been real fun. Thanks to the PD for coming in.
Next, if we could please have Steve Warren come forward. So first, Mr. Mayor, we have a resolution, and I will read the resolution. A resolution honoring Steve Warren upon his retirement. Whereas Steve Warren will retire from the police department effective February 18, 2025 from the city of Corcoran, Minnesota, after serving as a police officer for 28 years. And whereas Officer Warren began his career in the police department for the city of Corcoran on January 6, 1997, and went on to complete the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension's Supervision and Management Certificate in 2015. And whereas during his tenure in Corcoran, Steve Warren has served as a use of force instructor, firearms instructor, youth firearms instructor, snowmobile safety instructor, and field training officer. He has intentionally built community connections by investing his time and energies as the department's Shop with a Cop coordinator and police reserve coordinator, And whereas during his 28 years of faithful and dedicated service to the city of Corcoran, Steve Warren has been a committed public servant, having conducted himself in a highly professional manner, contributing to the betterment of the police department and the community as a whole. Now therefore be it resolved that the Corcoran City Council hereby commends and thanks Steve Warren for his many years of dedicated police service, especially for his positive contributions to the Corcoran Police Department, and he has wished a healthy and enjoyable retirement. And we have a special presentation.
Absolutely. Who's the official picture? Smile in general. And while we're up here, I do have a few more fun facts from 97 is easier to do. The top movie was Titanic, which grossed $1.84 billion. Top song was Candle in the Wind by Elton John. Gets a little more depressing because that song was written due to the death of Princess Diana. Average gas price was $1.23 a gallon. The first Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, was released in the UK. The Minnesota Vikings went 9-7, losing in the second round of the playoffs, so farther than they usually get. But then they were able to draft Randy Moss the following year, so bad and then good. And the Timberwolves made their first team postseason appearance, led by Kevin Garnett, in '97. And then the last thing is the DVD was released and introduced in North America. So.
Wow. Steve, do you want to say anything?
I spoke a little bit before out there. I was going to write something, but I really wanted to speak from the heart. And what I really wanted to say was the community as a whole made this all possible. It made it easy to work here. It made it easy to serve for 28 years. It truly just flew by. Most people here know that I kind of had a permanent grin on my face because I enjoyed coming to work every day. And that's no joke. One of the former council members, some of you have heard me say this before, he always joked about how a lot of times he couldn't quite see who was in the squad car because of the shine of the windshield and whatever else, but he could always tell when it was Steve because there was a big smile and a lot of white teeth. So, like I said, just speaking from the heart, you guys all made this possible. The police department made it possible. The 3 chiefs that I served for here made it possible. A very good friend. We went through pretty much everything in our careers. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of pains, a lot of sad times. Brian, I can't say enough for your friendship, your leadership.
Thank you.
We all appreciate that. The rest of the men and women here in the dark blue and in the light blue, they've all made it possible, just like all of you in the community. I can't thank you all enough. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, and I know Steve, you and I have talked a lot of things. The dispatch that happened a little earlier, that took my whole speech away from me, with the exception of a couple of things. You've impacted our community in ways I think you know and ways you don't know. I had a number of people that I didn't see here tonight. The expectations are you being at the rodeo, enjoying yourself, a tractor pull, a demolition derby. Night to unite, everything that you did while you were here as one of ours, I'd love to see you there. Another thing, the number of hunters you've impacted while you did what you did. A ton of them telling me, please tell Steve thank you. You've trained a lot of great people, and a lot of the folks in here have done that training and such. We would not be what we are today without people like you. You set a huge example for a lot of folks. You were tough on new recruits. I know that for a fact. And one of them is here tonight, and somehow he ended up getting related to me, but I can't say it enough. I'm not that great of a public speaker, but man, oh man, we aren't saying goodbye to you. You better be around, okay? And I agree with the smiley teeth for, I believe that was Alan. I always know when it was Steve, because that's all you saw was the teeth of the windshield. So please enjoy. Thank you very much from a lot of folks that weren't here today.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Give everyone a minute. What'd he say?
Hey, you got a shout out. My son-in-law is here.
That's funny. Give everyone a minute. All the people that were here for JCB. And the people that actually were here for JCB.
Oh, she forgot her dance.
Did you find that bag of candy?
Yes, but I came for her and had an interpretive dance I worked out.
Yeah. Later, Brett.
See that about me? Oh, God. You did. All I heard was interpretive dance and she.
For you.
Oh, boy.
It's on the agenda.
You'll need to worry.
That's in the closed session.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Thanks.
Yes, please.
Sure.
Thanks, Brent. Please. Thank you, sir.
That way people can still mingle for a bit. Although, good Lord, it's gonna get cold out tonight. -11.
Already?
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's gonna get worse next week too.
Yeah.
I'll be
All
gone
right.
next week. Oh,
What's that?
take it off. I'll be gone next week.
Oh.
Thank you. Put on the
Well, going somewhere warm?
Florida.
I can't really talk crap. I was just there. It was nice.
Where'd everybody go? We are entertaining, folks. And you don't have to pay for this.
They
Alrighty.
do pay their taxes.
I know.
Well, they don't have to pay for this. They have to pay. Alrighty. We'll move on to open forum if we have anyone that would like to speak.
We only have one comment card for a later item, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
And looks like we're good then. So we will move on to consent agenda, which consists of items 6A through 6O. Does anyone want to pull anything?
If, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but 6E, please.
6E. Anything else? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through D and F through O.
So moved. Nichols.
Second, Friedrich.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then item 6E, Dean.
I'm gonna hope I pulled the right one, because this is a 494-page packet. And it's probably directed more towards Kevin, if that's okay.
Sure.
I hope this is the one that's a $9,000 add-on because of the weather to put in electricity to the water tower.
That's.
In a summary.
On the water tower change order. Yep.
In a summary, so is this something that XL Energy does, is they want the money up front before they do the work?
Mhm.
Why? We aren't
'Cause they
going
can.
anywhere.
Because they can make,
Yeah, so it's just a
that's how they
processing,
operate.
so
Okay,
So
it's
I'll
not
quick-
special to just Corcoran, it's
No,
the
they-
way they do it.
if
Okay.
it's if it's in freeze condition, so winter work basically, they can charge a markup. I
Okay.
think that's through the Public Utilities Commission. I would assume it's the same rate they charge anyone because it's pretty standard.
Yep, and then the
So-
summary said that is that Rice Lake eating that cost?
That is actually Phoenix, it's a
Phoenix
different
is the
contractor.
group.
So, yeah, so
Rice Lake's
part of
doing
the
those.
issue that we got that charge
Okay.
was because of the timing and the coordination. So as the owner, the contract was set up that we would pay for that charge, right? So it's a part
Okay.
it's part of the cost, but we don't want, if we funnel it to the project, we would just pay a markup. So certain things we leave out because we don't want to pay a markup, right? So as the owner, we have to pay to get the power there. That's
Yeah.
our responsibility. In this case, we have to move forward with this and get it installed, so
Please.
we went back to them and said, you have some responsibility in why we're paying frost charges. They acknowledge that. The payment has to come from us to Excel.
I understand
So this
that.
change order is literally recognizing they're reimbursing us for the frost charges.
Okay,
is
and
what
is
this
there
trigger-
anything, we didn't do anything to delay it, was a delay on,
Yeah, they're
On
paying
their
they're
fault.
paying the full frost charge.
okay, okay.
So it's basically net neutral. So they're paying the
Understood.
frost charge, and then we're paying the full payment. It was, the full payments, was just approved for 6L. And now we're
Yep, no,
considering the reimbursement from the contractor.
my biggest thing is the pay up front for services from a utility company, and we aren't going anywhere, but
They don't
I'll
make-
get over it.
Yeah, they don't make special exceptions, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's because they know what else you're gonna do.
Well, as long as it wasn't just corporate.
fair
So,
enough.
Cool.
Okay.
With that, I will approve 6E. Or, make a
Motion.
motion to approve
Perfect.
6E.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Mayor, thank
I
you.
will second. Nichols.
Second by Nichols. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we are done with consent. So we'll move on to planning. We have a public hearing first, and then we'll do a public comment opportunity for items 7B and 7C after. So I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have anyone that would like to speak on 7A? I can get it on my, do
Motion to close the public hearing, Mr. Mayor.
I have a second?
Second. Nichols.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the item itself, who is presenting on that? Kendra?
And Mr.
Perfect.
Mayor, I had just a couple slides for the public hearing, so the public understood, but if we pull it up, it is an easement vacation request in Rush Creek Reserve. And it's sort of like the normal easement vacations. We're requesting to vacate a portion of the easement, and then a new easement will be provided over that same area for a wetland bank. For those of you that were on the council, we had a subdivision up on County Road 117 that had a wetland bank application, and if you remember, we had to vacate our easement so we could get a Bowser easement where our easement was, and then we get access, a maintenance agreement on top of that. Which is a long way to say, for all intents and purposes, nothing changes in our ability to access and maintain that area should there be any issues that the HOA does not manage. So the easement is in favor of the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and we'll have our access agreement on top for the portion of that outlot. And so we do recommend approval of that. The city engineer has reviewed it. We're continuing to work through the maintenance plan with our wetland inspector. And yes, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Kendra? Dean?
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yeah.
And I trespassed. I walked the creek without anybody with me and stuff. Are we done? Have we made the landowners north of this property understand that this developer has done everything to our liking and such, or is that still an issue? and I guess that question is directed to Kevin. I see it as everything looks right in my mind as far as what M and I would be responsible for.
We're darn close. I would say we have one more punch list inspection to do this spring to make sure everything's cleaned up. There's some erosion control fence that has to come out.
On their property?
I'm talking about, it's just kind of two separate questions, but.
Yep.
So on the properties to the north, I would say it's substantially complete. We haven't accepted it and released the surety that's over top of it yet. We anticipate doing a spring walkthrough
Okay.
with the developer and the homeowners, and if there's any remaining issues, we would correct them.
All right.
So we've done our best to respond to them and meet with them.
One example, Councilmember Van Camp, that we were talking about is there was commented previously about rebar. That rebar is actually keeping silt fence in place, and with the current frost, they cannot remove the rebar. So we needed to warm up before they can remove the rebar.
All right, no, that's all
And
stuff
then
I
The
saw.
developer's been in contact with the property owners.
Okay, so that is resolved, everything is to their liking, we can hopefully put that
I
to
mean,
bed when things are done.
I don't want to state that it's to their liking, because I don't want to have their opinion.
Understood.
In terms of what we required of the developer.
Our
there's still a
expectations
punch
are
list.
going to be met and done.
This doesn't change the contract, it's contract neutral
Okay.
for that. We haven't accepted it, it's significantly complete. We will walk it again, we will make sure it's complete and notify them when we're releasing surety.
Outstanding. Thanks for digging into that as deep as you've had to, so I appreciate it very much.
Any other questions or comments or concerns? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2025-06, approving the easement vacation for Rush Creek Reserve, second edition.
So moved, Mayor Camp.
Do you have a second?
Nichols.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Then we will have our public comment opportunity for items 7B and 7C, which are the Parks and Trails System Park Dedication Fund, I believe is what the title of that one is. And the City Park 60%.
So, Mr. Mayor, we have one comment card for item 7B. Josh?
Perfect. Come on
Would you
up.
like to please come out to the microphone and address the dais.
Hello, I do have I made a printout, is that okay to hand
Sure.
that out? Just a couple versions of something, and I apologize, this is last minute.
Thank you.
Neither Kevin nor Kendra nor myself knew I was coming today, but
No worries.
Kendra, I think you've seen that. I'd like to keep a copy. Just to talk on Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name's Josh Montgomery with St. Therese. Thanks so much for allowing me a couple minutes here to talk. We're now done. We've got our final occupancy. I don't know that we're done, but development just south of here, so we've got our final occupancy, so we're able to move folks into all parts of the building. It's great to be in the neighborhood, so close. The one thing that we've really noticed with some difficulty is, believe it or not, is folks finding our building, finding the site and where to pull in. And I know we're still not quite done with all parts of the project, so things are working and coming along. Part of the project, or part of I think our thoughts at the beginning was this area between 116 and our parcel would be a park area at some point in time. I understand the city's got some other maybe more pressing needs happening, but I did see the park on all park master plan. It looks like you folks are discussing tonight on the plan, so I wanted to make sure we came and just again reiterated our request maybe to see something happen with that sooner than later. I don't know if that's where on the agenda or the capital improvement plan that might fit in. I don't think it's a huge need for the city at the moment, but if there's an opportunity to do something, even maybe a gravel trail from one end to the other, just to create a loop around this road that we've got. If nothing else is gonna change in the near future, gravel trail or asphalt trail, at some point, through here. I think, if I'm not misunderstood, there may be a bid process for a turning lane coming up, and I don't know if that's quick enough to put in that, bid process as an alternate or not, but just to see where pricing may come in with something like that. Second, and which, leads to the handout there, is a matter of a sign of sorts, a gateway sign, I believe it was talked about in the very early discussions in 2020. I think there was a resolution passed that the city would work with the developers and as far as a gateway sign to the downtown area, and I don't think it's St. Therese per se, but to the downtown area. Now, we're not by code allowed to have a monument sign with this work that's happening on 79th Place and the turn lane. Maybe it's the time to incorporate some thoughts, especially if nothing's gonna happen park-wise there for a while. If we can get a sign, monument sign such as what I've shown to you, or a gateway sign, I'm not quite sure the word to use there, but some indicator from 116, other than the little blue signs that you really can't read when you're driving 50 miles an hour, to indicate to turn in here. And I think the important part that we would like to see is St. Teresa's, our main entrance, really is supposed to be off that 79th. So, you know, we can tell people to come up to City Hall. I still give people directions to City Hall, but it's getting in our back door. And once this turn lane comes, it's really, we'd like to retrain folks, guests, residents, future residents, to come in on that 79th Place. And when you're driving 50 miles an hour down the freeway, especially coming from the south, there's no indication that there's a road there. There's no indication that there's anything there until you're halfway past the project. So at that point in time, I really don't want folks, you know, goosenecking at 60 miles an hour going, is that where I'm supposed to be? So there is some way, and I know it, you know, I'm talking to staff, maybe it does, we would like it to say St. Therese. I don't know that staff would recommend that say St. Therese, but in the interim, if that were something that St. Therese could assist in putting up, we would definitely look towards working with the city in order to get the monument or a gateway sign up for downtown, and whether we're to say St. Therese in the interim or something else, but just some sort of indicator along 116 towards that 79th entrance would be, I think, would be very helpful and help finish off the project. So I know this is just a public comment period, but if there's any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, thank you for your consideration and your future talks tonight on the parks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. I wasn't expecting this and such. I was gonna ask it at some point. All of the documents, everything we saw about St. Therese, all of the drawings, everything else, I thought there was a facade sign at some point. That's still going in, or is it in?
There's a wall sign there on the west elevation facing 116, says St. Therese. I don't think it's over the chapel, but on that side, there is one wall sign, and I believe there's two more that are permitted.
Okay.
Or I should say allowed. So wall signage is allowed.
Yep.
If you've been out there, you've seen the little directional signs that direct you to the chapel or to the assisted living. So those are also allowed. But freestanding signs like we have here at City Hall or in the other areas of the industrial park, those are not permitted in the downtown, which is intended to be a pedestrian-friendly district. But we did say there'd be 3 gateway signs at the 2 entrances on 116 and then at the future entrance off of 10.
So we'll get that at some point, right?
For a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other problem is the issues we had with the right turn lane heading north and stuff. Once that goes in, things open up and change, so, okay. Nope, I just wanted clarity. Thank you for this. We aren't directing anything. We aren't talking about this. We're gonna talk about parks, but why don't I remember seeing the sign? Is it lit at night and everything too, on top of it?
It just when it got installed on Tuesday.
That's why I haven't seen it.
First
Cool.
time. It's really faint. It's small and it's faint, so.
Okay.
we'll-
All right, thank you. God, I thought I missed something else, so, thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
Maybe just put this together, the discussion points.
Or what? Is anyone else for 7B or C? Okay, I think we're good. Even 7B.
So I don't have a big presentation on this, so
That's
the
fine.
purpose of this was just to answer some larger questions about our park system and park dedication fund that came up as we've been working through our city park project, remaster project. So the report is in a question and answer style, and I identified 6 questions that I have for you.
Okay.
That I think would be helpful, so you feel free to let me know if there was anything that didn't make sense that I can go over to help with the discussion, but as far as what I'm hoping to get tonight, I'm looking for confirmation that staff should move forward with prioritizing a review of the park dedication formula and fee. And then another question is, do neighborhood parks need to have a special amenity in addition to a playground and sport court? The 2040 comprehensive plan does not mention anything about a special amenity, such as a mini splash pad, but that is what was assumed in our formula, and that does definitely have a cost associated with it. And so thoughts on that would be helpful, especially if we're going to be taking a look at our park dedication formula. We seem to have too many community parks in the current park dedication calculation. When I say that, it looks like some community parks were just double counted. And the city currently has 4, and then based on our population of 37,000 assigned with full build out of the MUSA. So that is not what we're anticipating between now and 2040. That is if everything gets built in the MUSA at the minimum density requirements.
Clarification question.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include the extra half a unit per acre that Met Council is discussing?
No, so that is the number that was used since 2016 at least in our park dedication formula, and what that assumes, again, is full build out at minimum density required. We would have at least 37,000 people in that population. So that it definitely could be something that once we understand what we're doing with our comp plan, typically park dedication, we should be looking at it every year. So I think we would basically keep with our current assumptions, and then as we know more, we will have to adjust and go further from there. But that does not at this time count in the 3.5 density rule that they are contemplating.
I believe voted on actually.
Did they vote on it? Okay.
Yep.
I've been in my own little bubble of working on park stuff, so.
What was the outcome?
3.5.
So no, that doesn't count it. So 2026, we will get our system statements. So likely we will be doing some kickoff in 2026. 2027 is really when the meat of the work will start for a comp plan. Typically takes about a 2-year process, and then we give it to Met Council in 2028, and then there's typically a back and forth to get it approved. And then once we have an approved comp plan, then I would say, and then maybe even once we've submitted it, once we have a template in place for how we are planning to move forward, then it would make sense to further adjust our park dedication from there. But I think at this point, we want to be consistent with what is currently adopted. So.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Yeah.
37,000 people on the eastern third.
If it were to all
That
be
includes
developed. Yep.
the big, long stuff along 55 and everything then too?
Well, and it's not 37,000. That also includes everybody on the rural side too. The 37,000 in the city, but
thank you.
that's under the assumption that
Boy,
the
we
use
were
is
gonna
full.
Not
stack
just
them
in
in,
a
weren't
third.
we?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So-
Sorry if I misunderstood.
We're not looking at 121,000.
Yeah, I just, good, God.
So yeah, I tried to make
You
it
did
clear.
good.
Yeah.
You did all right. I'm sorry.
It was confusing to me, like, why are we assuming 37,000? And I finally understood the logic behind it, but it took some digging to figure out the history on this.
That's some great, that's a lot of digging. Thank you.
So, but yeah, so as far as the open space park question, here, I didn't bring my glasses, so that was a mistake. Let's see here. Based on a population of 37,000, assuming full build out, we would only need 4 community parks. However, based on the land size of the city, it still makes sense to have 1 to 2 community parks in the rural area of the city, since all of the 4 we do have are located within the MUSA. So if we assumed that we will need at least 2 more, that would still reduce the number of community parks down to 6, and I believe right now we're at 8. So I think there's some room to balance out some of the cost of our system by bringing that number down.
Natalie, if I can, Mr. Mayor, another question.
Yeah, go for it.
How much of that involves the Three Rivers stuff? Is that part of all of this stuff, or is Three Rivers above and beyond
Are we talking about the trail?
the trail, the pathways? Gosh,
Well,
we can't
we're
build
also
enough.
in a search corridor in 2026,
Yeah.
2025, 2026. They're looking at potential land acquisition within the boundaries of Corcoran in order to develop a regional
To
park.
buy the regional park yeah, on top of
And then
it?
they're also doing a search
East-west
corridor for
trail.
the east-west Weaver Lake Regional Trail.
Yeah.
Is also, they're kicking that off this year.
At
And
least preliminarily crosses just about at City Park, so.
so the calculations for our park dedication
Is
are not
just
taking into
ours.
effect what happens with the Three Rivers Park
I
District.
mean, it's a, I think what you guys have done is a great plan and all of this stuff. It's nice to have these numbers, but
Yeah,
boy, that's really gonna do an awful lot if,
absolutely. So
Ton of
if we
open
were
space.
to be selected, if space in Corcoran were to be selected as part of that regional park, then I do think that we could definitely change the numbers from there.
Yeah.
So this is based on kind of worst case assumption.
okay.
And the same with the trail. So the trail, my understanding, we do get reimbursed for the portions that if they get accepted. That is not currently factored in, but that sets us up for success. because,
Reimbursed from Hennepin County?
Three
Three
Rivers,
Rivers.
we get
Three Rivers.
reimbursed. So
Sorry.
that goes back into our park dedication.
You're not having to use park dedication fees in order to build that,
Yeah.
because they're giving the money back.
Yeah, they're giving the money back. So it sets us up for success by doing it
After the
that way.
part, after the stuff is built though.
Well, exactly. So that's
Yeah,
why
the
we,
cash
that's
flow,
why we
yeah.
need the money, and they do pay us back. But then the good news is we can take that money and put it
I
towards
understand.
other improvements.
Thanks for answering some of it. Appreciate it.
Um,
I know where there's a really nice barn that'd
Yeah.
be a nice trailhead.
Yes. I think Jay probably told them about that too. Is there another question? Is there any?
Did you?
Yes. Is there any intentions to develop the open space park at Cook Lake Highlands, or I should just say open space? So this was a park that, can you scroll back up? I think it got, the picture got on the wrong
The little
page.
piece out behind the
Yeah.
bluff out there,
So
yep.
this was a park that was not really on our search area. We took it as part of negotiations with the PUD. I don't think that if we were to develop it, I think really what the most we maybe would need to do is just, I think it's not a paved trail right now, but Fairway Shores is paving their portion of the trail and Bass Lake is paved. So maybe it would make sense to earmark some money to pave the portion that is currently not paved, so that's continuously paved.
About how much trail is that?
I don't have those numbers today. It's not
not much.
It's
Can't be.
relatively insignificant, not to say that it's insignificant, but
Right.
it's
No, I
relatively less. And then maybe some kind of like a bench or
Bench or
something would be nice.
I thought that's what we had talked about.
Yeah,
We did talk about a
Previous
bench,
councils,
yeah.
a bench and maybe
A
a
lookout.
destination lookout kind of deal, just because what a neat amenity we have over there.
right. And then I think that, because right now, what we have earmarked for open space parks is significant. But if I kind of break it out and say, well, this open space park is not going to be that significant, again, that helps with our overall cost
Yeah.
for the system.
I would say it'd be pretty minimal to.
Perfect. And then the last question is, what other questions do you have? And might not be able to answer them all tonight, but I can definitely bring them back for a future meeting.
Okay. Anyone Dean?
The biggest savings in my mind, I think you guys had convinced me or beat it into my head, is do we do bituminous or do we do wood chip trails and stuff and not service them in the winter and those kind of things? Have we made that call on this stuff? Are we saying that? What are we doing?
So currently, the formula assumes our off-road trails will be, are paved. There are instances where we are doing a wood chip trail, such as Kirinimi
Yeah.
Meadows. That will be a wood chip trail, and that's because of it's located in
Okay.
the floodplain, and so sometimes it makes sense to do that when we have less than desirable land that we're using.
So pave these but not maintain them in the winter is what we decided?
Oh, okay, so that is, that is
The
separate
maintenance
discussion.
cost, all this stuff.
So right now, Kevin?
I think we all
So
said,
current,
I think we all said strap on some snowshoes and some
until,
cross-country
there will be
skis
a
or
couple
good luck
instances in
some
which we're gonna
trails.
have loop trails at some point in the
Okay.
future. And the reason, the suggestion was made to go low, no maintenance right now is because the cost of transporting the maintenance equipment
Yep.
around to do trail sections. If and when the time comes that we have loop trails, then we'll revisit it, because then it's easier to maintain.
But we'll have resources at that time then, where right now we are,
That would be the presumption.
yep, okay,
But we currently don't have any looped trails, and we're a ways away from that.
okay,
And
good.
so that will trigger the conversation on
Good.
how we can do a better job of maintaining those loop trails.
Yep, I'm thinking out loud. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting me do that.
Of course, of course. To answer your first question, Natalie, I would be definitely in support of reviewing and updating the park dedication formula. Like you said, we probably should be doing that more often. I know we did a couple years ago, but I feel like maybe we didn't have the results we were hoping or looking for. It seemed to be maybe a more complicated process than we initially thought, so hopefully we've learned now, and I know Jay has some experience in that area too, so. So yeah, I think that'd be great to review.
I wanted to chime in here a little bit on the first question about, do we have enough in our fees? Do we have enough park land identified? So I did a little bit of amateur data analysis based on my recollections of numbers of permits per year.
Okay.
And based on an ongoing level of roughly 220 permits, with 2.6 people per household, we should be seeing 500 to 600 new residents per year for as long as that growth continues, which would put us at about 16,000 plus by 2040, where the current comp plan horizon is located. And based on the number of acres per 1,000 people, that would indicate that by 2040, we should try to have around 224 acres of parkland. We currently have about 186, according to the packet.
And you said, what was your number you said?
224 acres.
34 more acres.
So I think in addition to looking for whether the fees are high enough, because of the rate that we're expanding our population, we probably need to have more acreage. We might need to indicate on the park plan some additional search areas. We had talked about that as part of Hope Meadows, that there's not really a neighborhood park amenity near them, the closest being Bellwether, which they can't easily access. So when that starts getting filled in with developments, it might be good to have something on the west side of 116 in the northern part of the city that those folks could have a park in. That might be an area to add another 10 acres someplace. And there could be other locations too as we look at the map. So I would say yes, definitely revisit the fees. I also think it's worth looking at, do we have any bare places in the park search areas that we would want to fill?
If I can make one comment. So one of the challenges is we are moving at a rate that exceeds the 2040 approved comp plan, which is 11,300. And so I don't know what that means. And we still have to explore that, find that out. And so to your point, if we continue this, we're going to need more land. But even more importantly, we're going to need more sewer access, which is probably something they're not going to just give us. And so it's multi-pronged.
And yet they
Challenge.
increase the density requirements.
Exactly.
Riddle me that.
And so the density, so we're going to reach that. these are important questions that we're going to have to be answering, particularly in the 2050 comp plan process in 2026. We don't have the data to answer that right now. The trajectory that we're on is problematic.
Is it possible to redraw the MUSA smaller to match the sewer capacity
Not
and the new
really.
density level?
No.
Kendra is nodding at me.
I'll let Kendra talk to him.
Well, we did actually discuss this with the 2040, and it's yes and no, because you absolutely can redraw it, whether it's politically prudent or not, is up to the 5 of you up there. Eliminating somebody from the MUSA has financial implications for those folks, even if it's a long-term play, and that can be problematic. So just a quick history, and I know many of you are familiar with this. In our 2030 plan, we did have 16,000 roughly, and I think Natalie had that in her staff report, anticipated. And that council drew a larger MUSA than we needed so that people could develop as they wanted. And I was not here for that decision, and that creates some challenges. So we know we've got 3 times the MUSA that we have in our population estimate. So that's the challenge that we visited in the 2040 plan that we'll revisit in the 2050 plan. So yes, you can. Do you want to?
No.
And to an extent, some might actually kind of happen by force because of the bottom area that's like slashed on the map.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
Southwest.
MUSA, but it's not really MUSA.
Yeah.
That now
Since their
supposedly
plan
is going to be
changed.
changing
Yeah.
to Rogers coming from the north sewer.
Yeah.
So I'd assume probably some will come out of that pseudo-MUSA and become pseudo-MUSA up there.
And also
We'll
to your
figure it
point with this change in density requirements, we're going to hit that even sooner. So we have more land, and with our more land than we need, and they're wanting it at a greater density. So we should have less land, and it should shrink as we increase density. So it's kind of counterintuitive what they're proposing. And they're also back to the sewer problem. You know, so we can build a new water treatment facility, we can meet the water requirements, we have no control over the sewer and the sewer access.
But they did have capacity for that population level for our 2020 plan, so it's not impossible, but yeah, it's just challenges that we have to work through. I did send a letter to the Met Council explaining, like, these population numbers are wrong.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem if they don't.
So I expect the conversation will be ongoing.
And some communities are pushing the envelope on the population, so they're seizing that capacity faster than what was projected. And so it's a sewer grab.
Before the sewer gets too full, then we gotta do another one. I mean, the Elm Creek interceptor can't go much more.
Right.
And coming from Maple Grove, sorry I said that, but in the rural side of Maple Grove, I've been through that where the city said, we wanna shrink that, and then all of a sudden the landowners said, wait a minute, we were in it, now you're not gonna take us out of it. And it ended up, a couple of years later, the Met Council just said, to hell with it, Maple Grove, you're all in the MUSA. And oh my God, that was a nightmare I don't wanna go through again. So, wow. That brings up all kinds of bad things. Bad
You
memories.
headed to the stanchion after tonight's meeting?
Gotta work in the morning.
But to Counselor Nichols' point, yeah, I absolutely think that we need to keep things in mind as we see population. It is possible that, you know, in the 2022, our building permits did take a little bit of a dive, but even our building permits taking a dive, it was still 200 permits. So that's still, it's healthy growth to feel confident that we are hitting the growth numbers we need for the infrastructure we're putting in. But it is possible that we have a year where we're not hitting the 200. And so some of it might average out, and that's the hope. And we are with the average that we did identify in our comp plan, because it was 230 units on average over between 2020 and 2040 was what we had put for our growth management plan. So I think it's just something that we're gonna have to keep our eye on. I do think I can earmark 34 acres, so keep in mind, we are still saying 4 to 5 acres would come from town center, for having a park in town center. So I think we could identify 30 acres. Now, the question is, considering how much we already have located within the MUSA, does it make sense to have a search area outside of the MUSA for that 30 acres? So that we're making sure that they're distributed across the city instead of just located within the MUSA.
What about the 2 little parcels we own up north here? What's that total that we're putting into
Which two
weed
parcels?
control land and everything south of Shaddy, north of here? Our 2
Pollinator gardens.
Pollinator gardens. I'm just saying, is that a consideration as,
That is not a part of our parks at this point.
well, let's make it.
So, but yeah, that's
It's an
something
option.
that we could look at. So it's not dedicated parkland, but I think it's flexible, so I'll let Jay talk, because he's
Yeah,
looking at me.
okay.
So the what ifs part about it, there's a lot of really helpful questions, and I've talked with some of you about other
Yeah.
alternatives too, for property that is worthy of us considering because it's unique and it should be protected as potential parkland. There are property owners that have had conversations with me and with some of you about their long-term plans and
Yeah.
desire to offer that land, potentially donate that land to the city. And so I think there might be other strategies that might not involve us having to buy land, but still get the favorable land that we want. Instead of what happens with development sometimes, is we get the land that they just can't manage to fit the property on. And so somehow that becomes the best and highest use for land. No, it's because they couldn't make a buck on it. And now we're supposed to make it the coolest thing in town. As someone who had to deal with a whole bunch of
Yep.
those with developments, it's not great. Because it's usually not in the right location for a neighborhood park. It's in an odd spot. You want it to be centrally located where everybody can access it. And so us standing our ground when these opportunities come up to make sure that we're identifying properties that we really want to highlight and protect rather than just getting the throwaways that nobody else wanted.
Can I chime in on that? I like your point a lot. I think what that has to sound like from council is when we hear a concept, we have to say, take out 10 units here and make that your park. And until we do that, it's not going to happen. And we'll end up with things like Wildflower Park, where it's 2/3 of an acre and 4 acres of wetland. That is minimally usable. It's certainly better than nothing, but it's not what it could be.
We'd want to be careful with that though, because then we're losing potential.
We gotta be smart
Yeah.
about it. Yep.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more thing, and
Yeah.
I don't wanna derail anything? Tremendous amount of conversation related to fire service. We aren't doing anything related to fire service right now about where is the finance coming to build a fire station, staff it, populate it with equipment, all of those things, correct?
We're not gonna put them in a park.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, we are focused heavy on this,
Yeah.
and I'm growing more and more concerned about that, but we don't really have a plan other than keep throwing money at our
So
fire
Matt's not
service
here,
group.
but one thing that I
Yep.
could say, Councilmember Aircap, is we do have a plan.
We got a plan,
We
but-
paid a lot of money to have an advisor help develop a strategic
Yep.
plan. It requires some investment in following through on the plan. And so a key part for us is we need the expertise on the staff to help us facilitate the plan, or we need to pivot to a different plan. But that's what the plan said.
Okay.
And, that will be future discussions, and 2026 is the time for us to really move towards that, because that's when we'll talk about staffing again, when we delayed the deputy director.
I just, when we.
We've been
safety
having
for fire.
several
When we
early level
when we
discussions,
did
but-
things in a previous location, there was a fee for fire. As the city grew, there was a tax or a fee that went into a fund specifically, kind of like park dedication. That's why I'm bringing it up right now, but I don't wanna, I don't wanna defer this. I don't remember what it was called, but I think Rogers just dropped a
I'll do some research on that.
Okay.
That's an interesting idea that I haven't heard before.
And then is that part of, I just got my propane bill and I'm paying a Rogers tax on my propane, and I live in Corcoran. So
They're applying it to your zip code?
well, I asked my propane company, and they said, we'll look into it.
Like a sales tax on it?
A
or-
sales
say
tax
Rogers
for
is a-
Rogers
Yep.
sales
Yep.
tax.
Was, yeah.
And I'm like, I don't live in Rogers,
Yeah,
I
I
live in
think you could
Corcoran.
fight that.
It's any business in that city though.
I'm
Have
not
to
in that
charge-
city,
no, no,
I'm
but-
on their zip code,
but are
so
they
we
in the
need our own
business?
mailbox. Somebody yelled squirrel and I ran and I chased it just for fear, but I'm just saying, I hope we can do something. I want to suggest it openly to us to start thinking of that, because
There's definitely a desire on staff's part to start talking throughout this year, and as we revisit, when we get later for our strategic
Yeah,
plan
I know.
for 2025, that's a great potential thing for us to identify, and it came out when we did the first session
Yeah.
in terms of public safety, long-term planning. Is there any comments about question number 2 about neighborhood parks and special amenities?
I'm not opposed to the special amenity idea. I would want to, just my personal opinion, if we did it and kept that as part of our park plan, I'd want to kind of maybe have that as a phase 2 for a lot of these neighborhood parks. Like, we don't need to necessarily do that special amenity up front, so I think we need to focus more on city parks. So maybe we do some sort of basic park infrastructure like trail, some benches, tables, that type of stuff. Maybe a court or field of some kind, preferably that's not the same type as, like, I'll take Tara, for example, maybe you do something that's different than what you can get at Wildflower. And then when we finish City Park, or at least progress and have more money in the park dedication fund and other sources down the line, then we maybe go back and add some of those special amenities into the neighborhood parks. Would be my thought.
I agree with what you're thinking in terms of staging. I think it can depend on what the secondary amenity is, because there could be some things that are inexpensive enough that you may as well just do them
Yeah.
when you're building the park itself. But if it's going to be more significant investment, it's better, I think, to get something in quickly that's useful to those residents, rather than having to wait until you have enough funding to do something grander.
This is something that I've talked with a couple of you about as we move towards the 2050 comp plan and through that process. Other communities I've worked with have used that as an opportunity to springboard into master planning for your whole parks and trail system. So we have a section in the comp plan that calls that out, but taking that to an even greater degree to kind of flush out some of the things you're talking about for theming, special amenities. And so in terms of our long-term strategic plan for the parks and trail system, us actually thinking through, like, what do we want to happen in different spaces, whether it's themes or amenities, so it's, some plans, and Gabby can confirm or deny this, when you've got different things, it gets people to explore your community in a different way too, when you've got cool things in this neighborhood that you don't have in that neighborhood, as opposed to some cities have gone kind of cookie cutter and they look very similar. And then they're similar of age. She was even telling us this project. Everything ages out at the same time, and then now it all needs to be replaced. And so, strategically identifying where's our best effort for now, and what do we want that to look like, and then what makes this special and different, so that you aren't just part of Corcoran. You're proud of your neighborhood. It isn't just they gave us this, a third of an acre, and we tried to make the best of it, but like, wow, we really highlighted something unique about this. Like, how do you maximize, wetland? I'm not great at it, but there might be ways that, as a community that wants people to get outside and engage, how do we make that a more positive experience and create that as an amenity? So we're doing that with some out space, but make that a master plan as part of the comp plan, so that we're not doing it whack-a-mole as it's coming up. But we're actually resourcing it strategically.
We're missing a whole element that many cities have entrenched in. Do we have any pull with the school districts that we have. We have how many school districts in Corcoran, but we don't have a single damn ball diamond by them, nothing.
Well, 'cause we don't have a school.
Or anything, we've
really.
got nothing, we don't have a school, we don't have anything. How do you factor that into our plan? Because at some point, we're gonna need something out here for schools
Jay and I have had
and stuff,
conversations with the
so-
district about really early
And it
levels.
got me going, I'm sitting here looking at an old school teacher sitting right here in front of me, so it got me thinking about it, so.
So,
You
so
know.
not just school district, but other partners, and we do have great partners. You know, JCB's working with those partners to try and get funding, try and do programming.
Okay,
And so there are definitely opportunities for us to find more partners to maximize and activate our spaces.
so like private
Sports associations.
sports associations, all that
sure.
stuff?
Three Rivers is definitely a partner that, you know, as much as they're talking about investing here, that's because there's a positive relationship there.
Okay, and that's all JCB?
I'll give her credit for it.
Okay.
She's been here
It's not
5
all
years.
me, but,
Yeah. It's
but I've been the
Horizon,
consistent one with it.
I think-
MRPA Horizon Award winner.
Okay, I know, that's been one of my frustrations, we don't have an identity other than rural. We aren't a Crimson, we aren't a, what's Rogers, what is Buffalo? I mean, we don't have anything like that here. So
Nothing
how do we
official, but
factor
I
that
think,
into here?
I think there's one school district that may be looking at some point again.
Will it be Rockets, is that what we're gonna be? No, I'm just kidding.
We should combine them all together like a crimson Trojan rocket.
Yeah. I just,
Yeah, because Wayzata, the one thing you'd say about Wayzata is it needs to be bigger.
yeah, I just, there's gotta be something. It's
We've
gonna
got
be
a duck.
needed on this 25.
We've got an amazing looking duck.
A duck that's close to a loon across, but it turned out really nice, so I just, huge amount of thought into this, you guys, thank you so much. What else do we need to say for you? I know one of our residents in the audience had his hand up for a second.
Well, and
I don't know if the
I
mayor
also
wants to-
don't want to overlook the linear park discussion, so I think, and I forgot to call it out as a discussion point, so just to clarify, I believe the way that it's currently factored into our park dedication calculation is we just assumed it'd be a trail. That is a long stretch, and I think that there would also be a need for natural resource enhancements such as trees in that corridor, as well as potentially some benches, shade structure, garbage cans. And so I think I'd like to call that out separately from the trails and add that into our park system a little bit more earmarked for those items, and I just wanted your feedback on that as well.
I'd be supportive of that. I think
Yeah.
it's probably going to not all develop at once, given how long it is, and just kind of unique of where it crosses roads and
Right.
different property owners. But, yeah, I wouldn't be, I'd be supportive of doing something there.
Yeah.
Rules. You're a teacher. You understand.
I can bring you the microphone.
We're trying to get you on record so that we can hear your sage wisdom. Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Okay, Dennis Stieg, 19320 Stieg Road, Corcoran, Rogers, whichever one.
Okay,
Corcoran.
It's a problem.
Mayor Corcoran.
Number of years ago, with Kendra only probably would remember it, we hired a gal to draw up the parks and trails and work with the Park and Trails Committee. We spent a lot of time on it. So I'm wondering, Kendra, do you remember what, that doesn't make any difference, what her name was?
Yeah, that was, our parks consultant was at the time Bonestro, and it was Sherry Buss.
That's it.
Bonestro, that was our parks.
Anyhow, we spent a lot of time to develop the parks and trails for the city. And it was approved. In fact, we were commended by the Met Council. There was not even one check mark against it. Sherry had really done a good job. And the rest of the people on the committee, the guy who was sitting right next to me here, Brent Anderson, he was on that. We walked all this stuff
on weekends our own. And we came up with this plan for parks and trails for Corcoran. I'm wondering, has this gone into the back file or where, or is it still valid or anything like this as far as the laying out of all the trails and the parks? And it was done, and we got not a recommendation, but we got commended by the Met Council. And we did not have a single mark against it. So if we're gonna be redundant and do it over again, or it's
I'm good.
old, or
I think it's coming up, Danny.
Or did some of that get incorporated into
I
the?
believe,
They're right there.
yeah,
That's
this
the
is-
one.
This is the most recent version of that, so I believe there may have been some changes, and I can
Yeah.
definitely see what I can pull. I don't have that at my fingertips right now, but my.
When would that have
understanding-
been, Denny?
pardon?
What, around when would that have been?
Oh, sometime in the 1800s. It's probably about 15 years ago, I
Okay.
suppose.
So 2005, or 2010.
I can-
Yeah, and so we
15.
were, a few of us decided that before we really start building, we should lay out where the trails are gonna be, so we're not fighting people all the time. So when they build, when a developer comes in, they know that there's going to have to be a trail. Not exactly there from point A to point B though, there's going to be a trail. And so it eliminates a lot of the pushing and shoving, as I'm not my backyard, which Maple Grove had, and so I did go to Maple Grove and talk to their people. Starts with a P, his name, I can't remember, that doesn't make any difference. But anyhow, went there and he said, and I asked him about starting the parks and trails and especially putting in trails. He said that would be the smartest thing that you can do. Otherwise, you're gonna have trails through like somebody's house or whatever. People will develop based on this is where the trail is going to be for these reasons, not just for helter skelter, for these reasons. So I wonder if there is such a thing anymore to have that a map of park and trails.
Look at the map, Danny. The one big green dot is right by my red barn.
That's where we put it.
Just telling you. The woods are gone, but the barn's still there.
Okay,
And I bet you talked with Terry Just.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
This is a
it's been
great,
done
great-
already.
Yeah.
And
great
so
general places. Some really
Yes.
neat, there were some really neat places you picked out.
It was, like I said, we were given a quote award by the Met Council for putting together one of the best that was around at that time and maybe even today. But it was well thought out, we walked it,
Yeah.
group of us, 6 or 7 from the committee, we walked every one of those where the trails or the parks were going to be, and to make sure that we felt solid, that this is where it should be, and not just willy-nilly. So, I made my spiel, but hopefully that was still in existence, that we didn't waste their time, because we thought, what was her name that was,
Sherry.
pardon?
Sherry?
Yes, Sherry Buss.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the one that was
So,
here.
so it had appeared that the work that you did laid the foundation for what's been used in the comp plan for the
Okay.
parks and trails. So thanks for your hard work for helping make that happen.
Yeah, we felt it was worth it, and I think it was.
Look at that green dot in the northeast corner. Isn't that right in the middle of the bellwether stuff?
Yeah, that is,
Yep,
yep,
that's
Look
what,
at you.
There's a natural park there,
and yeah, it'll be.
supposed to be,
There is.
Yep,
There is,
both of
yeah.
them will be there.
supposed.
Boardwalk's
to be.
going in soon.
Yeah, it's going in, yeah.
I've walked the trail.
Cool.
Yeah, I have two.
We appreciate you, Danny, very much.
Okay, just letting you know.
Thank you.
The
Thank
work
you.
has been done. Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
thank you, sir.
Okay, so then to wrap up this discussion, a question for number 3, just, I hear Counselor Nichols, we want to make sure that we are at least earmarking for at least 30 more acres between now and 2040, considering our city projections for population. But then other than that, are we comfortable potentially, I believe right now we have 8 community parks projected, and I think 6 is probably more reasonable, assuming that 1 to 2 are located outside of the MUSA. and that would give us some flexibility, and I think that would allow for us to reduce some of the expense
Yeah,
of the
I think so.
system.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So can you help me understand why we would want to reduce our parks? I'm coming from Parks and Trails, and that's a passion. So to like reduce our parks,
So I think we can always evaluate it as we have more population. So if all of a sudden we're looking at a population of 60,000, then we absolutely need to look at more parks. But basically, if we're budgeting for a system based on a population of 37,000, then the total acreage for that would be needed, 37 times 14 acres apart, so about 518 acres would be what would be needed for 37,000. And so I think we still need to plan for some additional parkland as well. But we already also have this Memorial Park Garden that in our comp plan we consider a community park. We have the 2 open space parks at Ravinia and Bellwether. And then we also have this, what I call Weather Park. It's this little 3-acre piece that is a 3-acre piece.
Okay,
in
Mixing it.
Yeah, thank you. Whatever that word is. And then, yes, on King Road. So we actually have a few already, have some areas. I think we could definitely look at more parkland, and I think we need to be strategic as population comes in and adjust, but also just trying to make sure that 8 community parks for a population of 37,000, when 4 is what would be needed for a community park.
how do we
seems-
decide that that's what we need though? Like what
So these
based
are
on
all
what?
the metrics that are established on a national level. So you have one neighborhood park for every 5,000 residents roughly. You have one community park for every 10,000. And then you generally want to have 14 acres of parkland for every 1,000 residents. So using those metrics, and you can deviate from that. But you also want to make sure your system is affordable and that you can pay for it. So it's just kind of a balance that you're walking
So
on.
if I could build on that
Yeah.
for a second,
Sure.
to answer your question, why would you want fewer parks? Having fewer amazing parks is better than having tons of not great parks. That would be a good reason why to have fewer parks, because you have limited resources for what you can do to activate those parks. And so using your resources to ensure that you're activating the parks that you have, to maximize them, to become really amazing parks, rather than we've got a lot of wetland that's called a park, but we can't even afford to put a trail in it because we've got so much.
Then I will also add, Kendra reminded me, so per statute, our park dedication formula has to be based on our comp plan. So our comp plan is only calling out the need for so many acres and so many parks, and we're hitting those numbers. So we want to make sure that we're matching that. Like I said, I think the comp plan does say about 238, if they're the range of acreage. I think we have some ability to do that and still be consistent with our city projections for population. But the formula needs to be based on what we have in the comp plan. So I'm not reducing the number of parks. I found an error in our formula because there's too many parks called out in the formula for open space. So I think that's the difference. So it's kind of, again, it's just a balance, trying to make all the moving pieces fit together.
Sure.
Something more on that too. I think Jay, you and I've had the conversation where you came from. There's some parks that aren't used at all.
And then,
Probably, I think you had said they're even in places that thought they would be used.
and then there's also a life cycle to a
Yeah.
community. So I've talked with Gabby about that in a community in which they built out the park system, they have a ton of parks, and now they don't have the money to replace the playgrounds.
The
in those.
equipment and
Yeah,
stuff, too
because
many
there's a
ice
cost associated with
arenas,
that.
outdoor arenas, all that stuff you
So
had
so
talked
while I
to
was
me
in
about.
Shakopee, we had 12 ice arenas, outdoor rinks, when I got there, and people were always frustrated that they weren't being maintained to a high standard, because there's just not enough people to go out there, flood the rinks, and maintain the rinks. And so we put cameras on the rinks, we saw those that were being used, and we went down to 4 active rinks. Now those 4 rinks, we went from 12 to 4, but those 4 rinks were used. So then that reduced our staffing to keep them going. It allowed us to increase the quality of the experience because we're only doing 4 rinks instead of trying to do 12. And so it was a much better experience. And so I definitely was sold on the do less with more because the quality of the experience you can enhance it. So like we're talking about amenities in a park. If your only amenity is a bench, that's not a great park experience for a lot of people. But if you're able to have a park that has lots of different multi-generational, multi-experiential opportunities, then lots of different people that can be their park, rather than just the person who likes to sit on the bench and watch the birds.
So the philosophy I'm hearing is half as many, twice as good.
I wouldn't even necessarily say that I'm saying we need to ask the question. And so sometimes it's really good to protect the space and have open space parks, especially for us. Like if we don't do something to protect it, who knows what's going to happen with it. And in some cases, we don't want to protect it. Kevin and I talk about this all the time. Like, we don't want to take those outlots as these developers are trying to turn them over, because then we get the opportunity to maintain them and it doesn't add any quality to the community. It's just a runoff pond that now we get the opportunity to clean out every 10 years. That's not something that we want to accept as parkland either. And so highest and best use of the land, that's probably a helpful thing for us to think about.
I have a question and follow up to Councilor Friedrich's point. So my understanding is we're allowed, as development happens, to claim portions of the land to develop a park system. And if we don't claim the land, we can claim cash in lieu based on the value of the land to build amenities into those parks. It seems as though it's difficult to get both the land that you want for your parks and the cash to build the amenities in those parks, given the nature of that system. So if your plan calls for the collection of 200 acres, you either collect 200 acres and have no money to do anything on those acres, or you collect less than your target number of acres, and then you have money to do something with the 100 or 50. So it almost seems like the system is set up to incentivize you to say you need more land than you actually intend to build in, so you can get the capital to develop it.
I can look at how that's handled in our formula. I believe there is a land cost element that's included in the formula, so that when we are reducing it, when we have land, that's not necessarily counting against our ability. It's just something to keep in mind that when but I'll confirm that as we work through this process and see what other cities are doing as well. I think it's a chance to just really take a deep dive into it. But I do think, if we're taking 200 acres of parkland, just
Pick a number.
yeah, for example purposes, if we were to take 200 acres of parkland from a development, because that was that'd be a huge development, but if we were to do that, because that was their park dedication requirement, then yeah, we're not going to be getting funds at that time to develop it. We would need other developments to come in to provide those costs. So,
Or potentially other phases.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then there's also ways that I've seen other communities, and Kinder can affirm, and Gabby works with this too, in which you're coming in, you're working with the developers because they know they're going to do multiple phases, is you help them to do the park because it helps them sell the lots. So they come in, and rather than, okay, we took the dedication and we don't get to building the park until 10 years after the development's complete, and all of the kids that were excited about using that park have all grown up and moved away. And it's a different phase. Instead, they build the park as part of the incoming development because now it really gets people excited about moving into the neighborhood and it helps them sell the lots. But that takes a lot of work to do that collaboration, and it really becomes important when we talked about the master plan to understand what it is we want to accomplish.
Yeah, so that would be a change in philosophy from what we currently have, and that was discussed in this report as well. But we could certainly look at that for future situations, but I agree, before we really open that gate, we would want to have a clear master plan so that that's already part of the framework that the developer is working in, because if we're going to have them take the lead and be in partnership with the city, it'll be really helpful to have a document saying, we're expecting a playground, we're expecting this kind of a field, and then we're expecting this kind of an amenity. So we would have to have that thought through before we do that.
Don't you have a playground in your backyard?
I have a little one.
Well, you should have built it bigger.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So what about if we didn't necessarily decrease the park size, but like talking about the master plan to connect the parks through walking trails, but still have spaces allotted, but maybe not sell it as, we're going to put a playground on this right away. We still have the space, because I think like 50 years from now, when the population is much greater, I think having those spaces, even if we don't develop them right away, is more important than not having them.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
I lived that dream in Shakopee, and I like the vision of it in terms of it's Killarney Hills, if you want to look it up. Killarney Hills in Shakopee. So they built this development, people moved in. Now we're 25 years into the development existing, and we go to put the playground in, and no one who lives there wants it.
Because they don't have kids.
Because they never had it and they don't have kids. But we have developed, we have apartments going in right behind it, that's going to be their neighborhood park, and we're getting lots of park development dollars to help finally build that park. And lots of people at the public meeting, everybody that lives adjacent to Killarney Hills Park, not interested in seeing it develop as a park.
I think that's a thing you're going to get with anything, though. We have it in Corcoran, too, where
Right.
people are going to say, well, I don't want that in my backyard. But if
Right.
that's the purpose of it going forward, and if people know that that's what it is, similar to like our zoned areas where people are upset because this is not going to be a light industrial, and they've lived there for 20 years, and all of a sudden it's going to be a light industrial. It's
Right.
sort of one of those things where I think as council, we just need to look at what we planned for and then stick to it. So if it's planned as a playground, you knew it was going to be a playground and you moved here 20 years ago, could be something much worse. Playground's kind of cool, eventually, but then at least we still have that space and we're not giving up anything. Because I'm a proponent for parks, and I think the more parks you can have in any neighborhood, and I get the numbers, and it's important to have our numbers, but I don't know if we should necessarily always base our decision on what those numbers are. I think we should look what's best for our community, and we want to be a rural community. So to me, that means having more open space and not decreasing that.
Another vector I would encourage us to explore is,
No.
rather than treating the open space parks as community parks, we could treat them as more of like a rural preservation area. So it's still important for us to meet our vision, to have open spaces like those available to people to go into, but we're probably not going to develop them in the same way that we would develop City Park, or the way that Maple Grove developed Weaver Lake Park. That's kind of what I think of as a community park, something that has multiple diverse amenities that are bigger in scope, that would draw a lot of people. You're not probably going to get that in the Bellwether Open Space Park or the Ravinia Open Space Park. That doesn't mean they're not worth having, they're just for something else.
So I will say that the formula does call out different cost assumptions for the open space park versus something like the city park remaster. There are different budget assumptions, and I do think that's something where I can also fine tune. I think the parking lot that's assumed for the open space parks, I'm not certain where we got those numbers, and I think we could take a look at some of those things to bring down the cost of an open space park. I think it'll help to also, know that Cook Lake Highlands, even though that's technically an open space park, which falls under community park, there's no reason to assume that's going to cost just as much as it will to develop or preserve the rural character that will be Ravinia as open space park. For
Were the
example.
cost assumptions that were in the packet for like in the Musa open space park, it's like 1.2
$2 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that including getting the land or?
I believe that there was a land component, and it's also including an assumption that there'd be a boardwalk, and Bellwether, the boardwalk, my understanding at this point, is going to be, if not primarily funded, entirely funded by Pulte. And so I don't think we need to keep that $500,000 in our formula, and then I don't think we're planning on any type of a boardwalk ever again, according to Kevin.
Yep.
So I don't think we can.
Party poker.
It will be called, if we do, it'll be called the Matson Memorial Boardwalk.
But
Strategic boardwalk.
I think like in Ravinia, while I believe there would be trails, I don't know that we need to assume the cost of a boardwalk. So I think there's some ways to fine tune that. And so I agree that we can definitely look at making sure the acreages make sense. I think maybe there's just some other fine tuning. So I'm hearing the feedback, and I'll see what I can do to make sure that we still are earmarking enough land while also figuring out where the formula doesn't make sense in terms of what we're maybe overcompensating or overestimating the cost. Okay, so then I have what I need for number 4. Number 5 kind of is something that I think needs to get answered ahead of our city park remaster plan. So essentially, a a question that we need to get answered tonight is whether the council feels the existing park dedication funds need to be earmarked for one or both of the neighborhood parks near Tavera and Bellwether at this time. Or whether that can wait for incoming park dedication dollars. By our best estimates, we're looking at probably about $1 million coming in, if not more, this year in park dedication funds. So, especially if we're not looking at a special amenity earmarked for about $300,000 in those neighborhood parks, then all of a sudden $1 million could almost pay for both of them theoretically. We obviously have to go through the whole process of designing it, but that was so. Is it okay? Basically, are we comfortable moving forward with the park dedications we have to go with the city park remaster, and then as we get more funds, we can look at the neighborhood parks next.
I think we probably want to have the discussion on 7C before we get into it.
That's entirely fine. It's just something that needs to get answered tonight.
I think in general, it's probably, so I kind of touched on this earlier, it's kind of somewhere in the middle for me where I think maybe there's a baseline, not even a $300,000 park, but a baseline single amenity basic park features that can be done in the short term, and then down the line when we have city park taken care of, we can come back and build out that park to a fuller capacity. Would be my preference right now, because I think city park is, and we'll get into it in the next item, but I think city park is the big one that the longer we wait on it, the more that number is going to balloon, and it's just going to continue to be unattainable unless we start making some steps towards it here, so in my opinion.
Can I ask a quick question? So like with parks, if we did like say the Tavera neighborhood, since we don't have basketball courts in the city park, could you do just a single little half-court basketball court, or is
Exactly what I was
that,
thinking for there,
or
actually.
and then that's all it is, that's all the park is right now? And then eventually you have space for additional equipment or whatever
Or
it
I'd
may
even
be?
say like a partial or full basketball court, or,
Even
two
a half
hoops
court.
on a half court, and,
Cricket pitch.
a little bit of the trail, and a couple benches and a tape.
I think we can certainly look at that. I think especially if we're contemplating the idea of one park having this type of court and one park having this type of court, I think we are talking about maybe separate from the city park discussion, maybe hitting pause real quick, taking that time to get a master policy in place. And maybe that's a little bit before the comp plan. We'll have to look at the timing of that, just so that what we do put in the park aligns with that grander vision, so.
I agree, but I could also throw out at the same time, basketball court, basic amenities at Tavera and at Bellwether Dog Park.
I kind of disagree about creating a master plan first, just because we've been developing strongly for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
We have one park that's been built in that time. We spent 50, 60K to buy a play structure that residents installed. I feel like we've got a lot of park debt, where the city has grown a lot. We haven't done a lot of investment. We haven't built out the amenity. I feel like I see some value in having a strategic plan, but at some level, I think we're capable of working with our consultants and with Parks and Trails and identifying what should go in at a basic level for a park, and not push that off 2, 3, 4 more years. I feel like we should move faster.
Fair enough. I don't think it would be a 2-3 year process necessarily, but we can certainly, I think that can be part
I
of
think
the
you're
discussion.
particularly right with, if we're doing something like I was talking about with the basic and simple amenity, maybe then when we're going back to build it out, we want a more of a master plans as we're building those out, so that we're not duplicating and making sure we have the right things in the right spaces.
Or we could apply a similar philosophy like you did with City Park, in which HKGI, worked with staff in order to develop a design plan. We commit to the design, and then we build what we can as we have funds available. And so that allows us, with the ones that have been identified, to identify those particular parks and say we're going to target them to develop plans, to build them out. We're going to commit to a design plan, and then we can say, what can we afford to do now? We'll put this much in, maybe it's a basketball court, maybe it's a gazebo, maybe it's something else.
Depending on where it's
cricket pitch.
located, yeah.
But then, the reason that's especially helpful, with the social contract that we've created with these new residents, you're communicating to them, this is what's going to happen. We're doing the community or the neighborhood engagement in order to get their feedback on what that can look like, just like we've done with other design strategies. So as we're refining that plan for those spaces, we're also able to communicate with them candidly, as they might have more grandiose ideas of what should happen there than what we're budgeting to happen there. So you can then clarify the social contract. Yep, you wanted this, and this is what we're going to put here.
Right.
And this is what you're getting tomorrow. And then the rest of it we'll get when the funds are available. And that might even incentivize some of them to partner with JCB to help make that happen sooner. It might help them go like, I really want this there. Or it might be an exchange, like I see that you don't have a cricket pitch there. I'd really like a cricket pitch, and I'd be willing to do fundraising in order to put a cricket pitch in our neighborhood park. Or, I don't know, curling.
You'd be shocked at me that the cricket league in the town. I've been to some of their events. It is impressive. I mean, they have over 100 teams. It's crazy.
Well,
Men,
they
women,
use our
kids,
fields for
it's-
cricket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an impressive
Those
league for
cricket
just
players
starting
are out
out.
there in
Yeah.
Corcoran cricket happens.
Yeah. No, it's impressive. But yeah, I think what you were saying, Jeremy, about waiting on the master plan for some of that makes sense. To get back to the question mark.
Yeah, no, I think I like Jay's proposal of maybe not quite a master plan, but definitely want to take the time to design it so that we're being thoughtful.
For sure.
So I think that makes sense. And then what questions about the parks and trail systems and park dedication remain as I continue to work through the formula and bring something back? I do think we'll be looking at increasing the funds, the fee requirements. I've already done some research, some surrounding cities and what they charge, and I think what I'm proposing is still in line with what other cities charge, so I'm not too nervous about it, but I do think we need to look at increasing it, and
Yeah.
even with some of the changes I'm proposing, trying to figure out where we can offset it with reduced costs, so.
Yeah, and I would say anytime that you feel that you're seeing other communities, we're getting out of line with other communities, bring it up to us, because I think we want to be on top of that. Yeah.
Is there any other questions any other areas I could clarify?
I think we covered a lot.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
I want to applaud Natalie's work on this. Like this isn't something like with all the other things that are happening with planning. This isn't something that would necessarily rise to the top, but it has such important strategic implications for the long-term quality of life of the community. And so it's a hard thing to do. I reached out, as Natalie said, to some of my friends who are doing this in other communities. I reached out to my old colleague in Shakopee, and he's like, we haven't looked at that fee in 8 years. And so the fact that we're doing this, I think, is really important also to communicate as a developing community. Like, we take this seriously, and we are sharpening our pencils, and we're paying attention. And you know, Natalie did this on her own. It wasn't saying, hey, she's like, hey, I'm concerned about this. And it's like when you tug on the thread of a sweater, and it just kept coming, and it kept coming, and it kept coming. And she didn't go, oh, never mind. She just kept pulling. And so I think it's really important for us. I just want to say that.
Thank you, Natalie.
All right, on to 7C. Does anyone want to take a break or just power through?
Power through.
Power through? Power through? Power through? All right, on to 7C.
There's a PowerPoint in the folder.
Oh, is there? All right. I'm happy.
I'm gonna stay here. You guys are gonna use the podium, unless you want moral
it's
support,
Rush
in which
Creek.
case I can go up to the podium with you.
City Park.
But I figured I'd chime in from here. Oh, Mark's gonna also leave you back up there, Hydra. I'm gonna call it.
Try and go. Turn it. There.
go to the next slide. So, okay, so I'll be giving an update, Gabrielle Grandy, yeah, giving an update on the city park project. So this is an update on our design process. We started this process over a year ago, conducting site analysis with staff, looked at what the program was for the park, completed some concepts, developed the preferred concept last summer, which was presented to council then. We've been working on schematic design. Right now we're at the end of design development, so we're getting close to construction documentation, but we are presenting an update on where we are. We have a few different scenarios in terms of budget to present. So we hope to get feedback tonight on which scenario we'd like to move forward with to construction documents. So these are some graphics showing the progress and evolution of our design process. So tonight is our presentation of the 60% design review, also called design development, and then we'll be discussing budget scenarios and hopefully move forward with construction documents after that. So again, seeking input from you tonight on the design in general, any input on how the design has progressed, any comments, changes, and then also feedback on the budget options and scenarios, which scenario or hybrid scenario should we move forward. So this is a summary of engagement. I can touch on it a little bit. So we had a survey during November of last year. We got quite a few responses, 197, of which 90% of the respondents said they were Corcoran residents, so it was nice to hear from the community. We appreciate people taking the time, but the splash pad, the playground were by far the most desired features, with the building coming in not far behind. There was a big emphasis on integrating native vegetation and shade trees, along with pollinator-friendly and kind of low-maintenance, low-water options for plantings. There was a high preference for slides and embankment features, so really integrating things like the playground into that hillside, and then having a natural-themed splash pad and that above ground and at ground level sprayers. And as part of that, it's important to note we could start with ground level for these splash pad sprayers and then adapt it in the future to incorporate more above ground features.
And on that,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but on that, that's I think a good way of looking at all of these. I think where we have maybe a baseline that we start with and have a identifiable way to build it out more over time, whether it's the building, whether it's the playground, whether it's the splash pad, whether it's the parking lot, whether it's the fields, all of that. I think that's a useful way that we can actually get a good amount of this started, and then as time and money comes into park dedication or other sources, we know exactly how to expand the splash pad, how to build out the building, how to do whatever. So just wanted to add that.
Additional areas where there were desired features were things like a dog park. That is also an active survey right now, so this is my casual plug for anyone listening if they wanted to fill out that survey as well. There was also an interest in restrooms, concessions, and shaded gathering spaces. There is a strong desire from the community to have connectivity and safety, so really making sure that our walking paths are connected from park to park throughout the community, but also within the park itself, and as well as accessible. So making sure that people of all abilities, ages, etc. can utilize the space. And then the community vision, there was a strong desire to incorporate Minnesota and Corcoran heritage. So defining what that means, we've taken that as more of a agricultural feel with the playground. So integrating Corcoran's history in that fashion. There was also sustainability and future expansion. So similar to what Mayor McKee was mentioning, looking at how to expand these further. But right now, like you said, we're limited on resources, so honing in on how we can improve it with what we have. And finally, just the demographics. Like I said, 90% of respondents were from Corcoran, with most being families with children ages 25 to 44.
slide shows our updated site plan. We've made a few adjustments in terms of the layout of the parking lot, which is the central part of the park. On the west, you can see the fields. So this is an area that right now has a lot of topography, so we would grade these fields to be even for multi-use cricket, soccer, and other field uses. There's pickleball courts shown 6 would be an alternate in the first phase, and then to the west would be an additional 6 courts in the future. The regional trail circumnavigates the entire park, starting in the south side of the parking lot, going up around to the north, and then connecting over at 13 across County Road 10. In the central part of the park, number 8 shows where the park building would be located. 6 shows the splash pad. 5 is where the new playground would be located. 7 identifies a patio and open shelter behind the park building. And then we have in 16 would be tennis courts, which would be a later phase, and 14 identifies an amphitheater, which would also be a later phase. This slide highlights the paving and trails. So the lime green going around the edge of the park would be the regional trail, and then in the central developed area of the park, the orangish yellow color would be bituminous asphalt trails, and the blue would be concrete. So there's concrete plaza around the building, and then some sidewalk concrete trails around the splash pad and playground, and some concrete to the south of pickleball courts. This slide highlights trees and landscapes. So there are a number of large ash trees in the park, which would be taken out, anticipating emerald ash borer, and we would replace those with a number of new deciduous trees to provide shade in the future. And then the south side of the parking lot, we're showing a heavy screening. So because the parking lot is close to County Road 50, we need to provide that screening to meet code requirements. Next slide. So this is more detail about some of the species we're recommending, including river birch, oak, maple, hackberry, elm, and then coniferous trees, which would provide more of that screening on the south end. And then we proposed some landscape areas around the playground, which could be native perennial vegetation. This slide is highlighting stormwater management areas. So to the south and to the west of the parking lot, there would be an infiltration basin on the south, which would only be wet during rain events, and then the larger triangular area would be a wet basin, perennially wet basin. This slide highlights some of the lighting. So the dark circles highlight the overhead Cobra parking lot lights, which would be for safety in the parking lot, and then the yellow and pink dots highlight pedestrian scale lighting. This would likely be an alternate due to cost, but would provide an expanded use in spring and fall for nighttime use of the play areas, splash pad, and trails. So this is a little more detail on the lights. We're showing some of the pedestrian scale lights on the left and bollards, what those might look like around the building and around the play areas. And then we're also looking at, there is a desire for lighting on the fields to the north, so we would either provide conduit for future field lighting or have field lighting as an alternate in the project. This slide highlights the floor plan for the proposed park building. So the yellow areas would be the common areas you'd enter on the south side of the building. There's a small vestibule, and then there's a hallway in the center, and then the main gathering area could accommodate up to 100 people, and it could be split in the middle so that it could host 2 separate events. And there are exterior garage doors on the north and south of the building that could be opened up in warm weather times so that it could be entirely open throughout the main gathering area. And then there are 2 doorways on the east side that could be open to the small paved area looking out towards the T-ball fields. The green shows a kitchen, catering kitchen, with a window and door to the outside. The blue show 4 restrooms. So 2 of those restrooms would be open to the exterior, and those could be open when the building is locked, so that when people are using the splash pad and playground, those restrooms could be used. And then 3 of the restrooms are open to the interior, so those could be used all year round during events in the building. And And then the gray areas are for storage and utilities. These are building elevations, so looking at, on the top would be the front elevations. You can see the entrance in the center of the building. And then on the right side, you can see that garage door that can be opened up in warm weather times to open up the main gathering space. The center elevation is from the east side, so looking from the T-ball fields toward the building, you can see 2 doors and then some windows in the center. And there's an overhang over those doors and windows. And then the bottom elevation is showing the back of the building. So this is looking from the north, from the playground, where the patio would be. There's, again, another garage door that opens to the main gathering space. And then on the right, you can see where that catering kitchen has a window and a door. So that could be open for if there are concessions or times where food needs to be transferred outside to people gathering out there. So there are 3 different options for the exterior cladding of the building. This is showing a black ash exterior. Next one is gray. And next one is red. And then there are other options too if some of those are cheaper. Then this is the playground. So we did get playground designs from 3 different vendors.